Go ahead.
All right. So the first question I want to start off with here is since we're going to talk about the league and sort of how it's been so far, what have you guys liked about the league and what have you sort of disliked about the league? Like Cam, in our sense, we know we kind of came from the MEL, which was Vacaville, all those Solano County schools. George, you guys are coming from, Marin County. Has the travel been better for you? Cam, what have you liked about that? And Mike and Ray, you guys can add to this too.
I'll start, and I'll simply say that the relationship that we had as a school and an athletic program with the MEL schools was awesome, fantastic, and no issue whatsoever with the MEL schools. I would say that as time went on, Sacramento and some of the Foothill region just started to get more and more prominent and just weighed heavier in that section. So moving over to the North Coast, I would say that the schools that are here right now, as well as the schools that are not represented on this Zoom call, but in the Vine Valley, once again, great relationships. I love you guys. And the section, I would say, has been has embraced our presence in the section. And anyways, I just feel like it's a really good fit, and it made sense at the time to make the move over to the North Coast and join the Vine Valley.
I would say for Justin-Siena, Marin County League was a good league for the school, but obviously the travel was a real bear. There's a lot of commute time, a lot of lost class time. And so we're much more comfortable being aligned with the schools we're aligned with now. But I will add an asterisk to that, and I second Cam's position that everyone gets along in this league. Everyone got along for the most part in the Marin County League. But we face a unique challenge in this league. Our student population is under 600, and basically every school has at least twice as many students as us. And yeah, I know there's some differences in terms of how the students end up being drawn to the school, but nonetheless, it creates some real challenges for us. And there's not many schools in the section facing what we're facing in terms of enrollment challenges.
Yeah, this is Mike, Sonoma Valley High School. So yeah, we outside of just the travel to Petaluma and the SCL, our travel has been greatly reduced, which is good. It creates more opportunity for geographic rivalries for our fans to get to. Second, the competition is really good in every sport. So we appreciate that. And the third one is, and both Cam and George, already talked about a little bit, is that's the relationship that has been quickly established and has been very positive. So we're very fortunate to be in this league.
Yeah, and in regards to Petaluma, I wasn't here when the change took place, but from everything that I've heard so far and what I've experienced has been, positive, and I really enjoy working with, all the ADs in this league and whatnot. I will say that the travel is quite a bit more for us, and it is a source of contention with our parents and some of our coaches. The actual mileage isn't much different from going to like Healdsburg or something like that, someplace in the old SCL, but that traffic there on Highway 12 can be just a real bear getting over there to Napa. But in terms of competition, I think it was the right move for us. It's been a competitive league with an asterisk next to football, more or less, but hopefully we can start to change that a little bit. But other than that, it's been positive for the school.
You guys think you guys have talked about the competition and the travel, Sonoma, Mike, you said that you guys have had a reduction in travel, whereas schools like Petaluma and Casa are having to travel, a little bit, not necessarily farther, but it's more difficult to get to. And obviously you have the 3 Napa schools right in town. Has attendance dropped at your sporting events as far as students, or is it gone up? And I'd like each of you to kind of touch on that for your specific school.
Oh, I think our attendance has increased. Sonoma, Napa, and Vintage and American Canyon all bring healthy amounts of visitors to our home games, and we travel to their home games. The only school that we routinely had a lot of visitors from the Marin County League was Marin Catholic. So it's definitely grown.
Yeah,
Yeah,
same here. You know, our attendance has increased both at home and on the road, especially. And I think we have some healthy rivalries, and the close proximity for our fans to travel makes it fun.
I think the fun part about the rivalries that Mike just talked about is that they're not just high school stuff. I know my son is going to be a senior. He's played against some of those Sonoma Valley Dragons since they were like in fourth grade in CYO basketball. So we've known those kids for a long time. And I mean, you mentioned three schools from Napa, but it's really four. I mean, that's with Napa Vintage, American Canyon, Justin. It's those games are packed for the most part, no matter what sport it is. And it doesn't take very long to get over to Sonoma. And quite frankly, same thing with Petaluma and Casa. So that's been great for our fans, just the travel and the ease that it is to get to those games and get back. Those Vacaville games, when we played Vacaville and Wood, those were late nights.
They were.
Again, being my first year, I was at some Petaluma games because my nephew was playing on the team. I think the attendance has been normal. I do know that we get less of our fans traveling to those Napa games than I'm sure is vice versa. And one aspect that I can, touch on for that is the transportation issue. Whereas a lot of times in prior years, we would be able to only take like one bus to other schools because there'd be so many parents to take those kids back. And nowadays with Napa, playing with Napa schools, we need to schedule two-way transportation, which, it's the safer thing to do anyways. You don't want kids driving back and, a lot of parents and that kind of thing. But I do know that it has decreased our attendance at away games.
So the next thing I want to ask on top of that kind of question is like, has it re-energized the student bodies more? I mean, these local rivalries, all these kids know each other anymore. I know for sure in Napa that's the case, like between Vintage, Justin, Napa, a lot of kids know each other. Has that sort of got the kids more interested? I know you already said that it already rose your attendance, but has it really got the students' body more into it?
Yeah, I think it has from our perspective. I mean, again, having, as Cam mentioned, have those kids play in youth leagues and not just, Vintage, but, with Justin and Napa and Petaluma kids, all those youth leagues that they play against, and they grow up and they get to play against them in high school. I think that lends to some healthy competition. And your last question, Michael, Cam touched on a little bit, getting home sooner after contest. I think that's really big as well, to allow parents to go watch their kids play, because not traveling another hour back from Annalee or El Molino.
Galesburg, yeah.
Galesburg. And so our games start a little earlier as well. So I think that really helps draw attendance, because they know they're going to get home at a decent time as well.
Yeah, I think for our students, this has been an eye-opener, because people want to beat them more than the Marin County schools wanted to beat us. I mean, they take the field, they both teams want to win. That's a given. But our students are having to adjust to a world where, an athletic world where we're a target, and and others take delight in beating us. So I think it's been good for our kids, because that's part of competition. You have to rise and you have to handle the circumstances. And I think it's been really good for our students.
I think that's a really good point. And it's healthy, at least from my vantage point, that competition. But I know for a fact that I live in a neighborhood with at least 3 or 4 Justin-Siena kids in North Napa. And with my son and some of our other neighbors playing for Vintage, there's some pretty good street ball games going on in the days that are not in, like right now, there's a local park that is just, it's some of the best basketball being played. It's like the Napa version of Rucker Park. But yeah, no, our kids have really enjoyed going to games, and they know the not only the kids on the courts or the fields or the pools or whatever, but also the kids in the stands opposite them. And I think it's pretty healthy competition. Every so often it gets a little funky, but for the most part, it's pretty fun to watch.
I think we're pretty fortunate to still be in the league with Casa and Sonoma. Obviously, Casa is our big rival. And Sonoma, of course, has kind of increased the rivalry a bit in recent years. I went to Casa, and I love the old Sonoma County League with Healdsburg and Annalene Elmo. But that was a different time, and it was much more of a competitive league. Healdsburg went from winning the SCL when I was a senior in 2006 to not having a team, a little over a decade later. So just that demographic kind of switched, changed things up quite a bit. And so I think in terms of like competition and like these ADs are saying, raising that level of competition amongst our kids is good. It's good for our kids to play teams from Napa and see what different competition looks like and force them to rise to that occasion.
Yeah, what have you guys as athletes, from what you've heard, obviously some of you are coaches of a specific sport as well, and your incoming senior class is, I believe, the last class that was involved in your old leagues. Have they noticed a change in competition or in anything like that it's made it better for them?
Well, I'm not certain that the level of competition has risen so much, because the Marin County League was really good. But the intensity level has definitely risen, which I think is healthy for our athletes.
Yeah, there's our competition level has definitely risen in this league compared to the old SCL. Not to speak about other schools, but there were some nights where you may not have had to play your best and still have an opportunity to be successful. In this league, seems like every sport, you've got to play at a high level in order to be successful that night. And so that's kind of fun.
Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, I'll echo much the same. I'll say that I think the competition level amongst the league is great in almost all sports. I will say, having helped out with football last year, it is a little different, playing, just for example, Vintage, right? Where they are so good in that, being in a new league, I think at a certain point the kids look at it like, oh my gosh, we're playing this like juggernaut. And, I think some kids raise their level of play, and other kids might be a little intimidated by that. But by and large, I think it's good for them. And I think over time, that competition level will increase even more so. And, they'll recognize that, these guys aren't going away. And so we need to raise our level of competition rather than just kind of like backing down. So I think it's a good thing overall. And like I said, all other sports, the whole league seems real competitive, which is good to see.
I would say, we had some really great rivalries in the MEL. I mean, and if it wasn't the prototypical rivalry, it was just teams that we really look forward to playing for one reason or another. And that hasn't changed moving over to this league, and it's just refocused. But much like Ray referred to his tenure as an athlete, I remember going through the MEL when we played Fairfield and Vallejo and Hogan, and all those teams are not in the MEL anymore. So, I mean, things change over the course of time. And, for a while, Vintage was the whipping boy in the MEL, and then we started to kind of come around, and we have a good thing going right now, but it's a constant fight and struggle to keep the edge. And so that's what makes it fun, though.
Gotcha. So, next thing I want to ask is like, what's been the biggest challenges of a 7-team league? Obviously, you got the buys, but what other challenges have there been so far with this league through 2 years?
Not going to let us talk about the bye. 'Cause that's, I mean, scheduling wise, that the bye is just I can't stand it. It just messes with all sorts of sports. But um, you know, I think for us, we have a very, very natural rivalry with Napa, and that's been, I mean, decades of big games, and that's one big challenge that we have. If I'm being very honest, is I'm not sure if the other schools in the league have that same sort of deep-rooted rivalry. I know Casa and Petaluma, but you know, the way we talk about Napa Vintage, I don't see that being replicated with any other school, good or bad. I'm not saying that. Just that's a challenge for us because certain traditions were in place with the big game that were always in place, and we have to make some adjustments with how we approach that with this new league.
Yeah, I would think the league would be better off if we had an even number of teams. And so I think getting to 8 would be a real value. I think because it's a new league, there's a lot of challenges. We're kind of a work in progress in terms of our policies and forming new traditions and new rituals and routines. And so sometimes when you're doing that, you make mistakes. And we're going through an adjustment phase that I think is still ongoing. But the spirit in the league is positive. That helps you get through those adjustments.
Just to echo what Cam was saying, you know, I tend to lean far more towards tradition. And like he says, you know, I think that there is something to be said about keeping traditional big games that last week of the season, not have to rotate that by. You know, I think Napa Vintage and Casa Petaluma, you know, it would be great to keep that as the last game of the season. Just, you know, it serves well for a lot of things. It serves well for Gate. It serves well just for the planning and the kind of pageantry of it all. But again, with the 7-league team, you got to make sure it's equitable for everyone else. So, I mean, I think that's just one negative, but by and large, everything else seems to be going real well.
Yeah, it's just scheduling, creating schedules with 7, you know, an odd number of teams versus an even number of teams. Other than that, you know, again, 2 years has been really positive. You know, going into this 3rd year, we just had to sit down and revisit the schedules for the upcoming seasons. And actually, it was pretty easier than it was when we had regular seasons to try and create a schedule for. So, yeah, having an 8 team would be pretty cool.
Has there, just a quick follow-up, has there been anyone trying to recruit an 8th team in the league? Has that ever been talked about? Are there any schools in mind that could be a fit?
Well, there's always rumblings about trying to get a Northern Marin team up for us, but again, that's just Petaluma's point of view. So it'd be like a San Marin or Novato, but I mean that's so unlikely to ever happen.
Someone on that side, though, Ray, would really help balance the league. We make travel a lot better and a lot more equitable. So I think if the league expands, it needs to expand west.
Yeah.
So we will let's get into the new CIF and NCS calendars. First off, that Monday I'm sure was extremely busy for all of you, and probably this whole week has been busy. What did you guys think of the new calendars that were released, and kind of what are some of the challenges you're having to face as you're preparing for sports that don't start until December?
Well, preparing is an operative word. It's hard to prepare when you're not allowed to do much. You know, we're preparing theoretically, but in terms of the practical preparation for a group of athletes, that's not a whole lot going on. We're doing some workouts and stuff, but they're all outdoors and they're real limited in scope and design. I think the obvious challenges for all of us are the same. We have a facilities crunch. You know, we're going to have football, soccer, lacrosse, and track all being played simultaneously. We have one field. I don't know how we make that work. I think the schedule was set up in a way that preserved the football season, and I understand the fiscal implications of that and why that needs to be the case. but when you make amendments to further one cause, you have to take from something else. And I think the basketball season is shortened, whereas football is going to get played on normal, not the normal time of year, but the normal time frame. Where basketball's got what do you got, Mike? 2 weeks, 3 weeks to get ready for your first league game. That normally you would have months to get ready for your first league game.
Yeah, I think the other challenge is going to be multi-sport athletes. And, come, maybe not in the fall, but come spring, it's going to be quite a challenge. And, everyone on this call realizes that, varsity athletes are there for a reason, and it's going to be a real challenge to have an individual be able to play a varsity sport and another sport. And then, like lower level kids, you got freshmen coming in who really truly don't know what they want to do, and you want them to try as much as they possibly can. And that's going to be quite a challenge as well. So haven't really sat down to try to get our arms around that. But we will, and we'll figure out a way to make this a positive for our student athletes.
Yeah, that's definitely the mindset that I'm staying. We'll make it work. In fact, I complimented these ads in our league when I met with my coaches, because when we met as a league AD group on Tuesday, we talked about what we're talking about right now, the facilities and the multi-sport athletes and all those types of challenges. But to the credit of our group of ADs, I think we're all in the mindset of we'll get through it and we'll figure it out and make the best of it. And that's a pretty powerful mindset to have, considering the challenges are pretty mighty. Yeah, but the facilities, and George mentioned the track. I mean, I think you forgot lacrosse too. So
there you go.
There's a lot of different size balls flying around the field and kids running. So, we don't even have lights at the vintage turf field. So and those are winter months, obviously we'll get some daylight savings help in March at some point, but I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah. I mean, that's it right now. We don't know what we're going to do, but we're committed to doing something that'll work, whether it's morning practice. We do have lights available for practice, so we can go later in the evening. There'll be a way to make it work, but it will be non-traditional.
Right.
It'll be different.
Right.
Yeah, when I met with my coaches, same thing. One of the biggest discussion points were the facilities, but the multi-sport athletes. And, at first, the big the big sports that kind of overlap that might pull athletes one way or the other is, boys baseball and basketball, and then girls softball and basketball as well. And, afterwards talking with these coaches, it's like, if you just put what's best for these athletes first and realize that some of these kids lost their season this previous school year, and it's been such a trying time for them, just give them the most opportunity as possible to play. And, if the kid wants to, run themselves ragged, like in a good way, and just play all these sports and all these things, like we should let them, especially if they're seniors and they just want to do it all while they can. I think just keeping that as a priority is what's most important. And I think, like Cam was saying, I think that's the mindset for all these ADs, and then all the coaches that I can speak to have a similar mindset too, which is nice.
Yeah, the facilities thing is, we were already going to be facing this challenge with, the construction of our new facilities. We don't have any fields. And so we're just going to try and figure out football. Obviously they play at Arnold Field, so we're okay there. Soccer, we had always had to go to Petaluma fields there, community fields. So again, the transportation issue is going to be a task, as well as transportation has seemed to always decrease. We have a significant shortage of bus drivers. The budget for transportation is a challenge. And there's just some teams that we can't get parent drivers for, soccer being one of them, and, football being a large group of people to try and transport. I guess it's kind of good we have till December to figure this out.
Yeah. So the next thing I sort of wanted to jump into, I hope I didn't cut anybody off there, but how's the summer workouts been for your teams? I know Justin and Vintage have been practicing. Ray and Mike, I don't know if your teams have been practicing, but how's they been going if they have?
Yeah, Sonoma football has been out conditioning on the soccer field at the middle school adjacent on our campus. Again, you know, and George spoke to it, very, very limited in scope and what they can do. And, you know, it's just good to get kids out there and get them out of their houses and doing something. Girls basketball has, again, been utilizing that soccer field as well for, you know, small conditioning pods. Volleyball has asked if they can start this coming Monday to, you know, utilize the soccer field and just get out and run a little bit. And we had thought that we had approval to, well, we did have approval to go indoors and work out with some basketball players, you know, each following some social distancing guidelines and bring their own basketball, stay at a basket. And, you know, we were able to do that for like one day. And then that night it got canceled. So, you know, you deal with what you were dealt with and then you make the best of it. So football's been the one that's been out on the field, but right now they're done. You know, they're gonna wait until September. And, you know, as the other schools are, we're, you know, going to distance learning, and I'm confident that our distant learning is going to be a little more rigorous than it was in spring of last year. So hopefully the focus is more on academics for these kids to start the school year, and then we'll transition into extracurricular activities.
Yeah, Vintage is this is our last day of conditioning today, and we've had a great month or so of opportunity for our coaches to get with our kids. And the policy, you know, prohibits certain things that make sports fun, but by and large, the reception from the athletes and their families has been, and coaches, has been great, because it just gives them an opportunity to be around each other. I would be remiss if I didn't mention, Kyle, that with have you ever watched that Brian Wilson commercial where Pat Brole's in the background as the machine?
No, actually, not anyway.
Yeah, your brother was back there walking around with his shirt off. I thought you were like making that.
Sorry about that.
Now we're going to take a break though from the conditioning until probably late August, early September, and hopefully we'll jump back in and things will be in a positive direction.
Yeah, Petaluma City Schools, we were a couple weeks behind some of the other area districts with getting started with conditioning. But Costa and Petaluma both worked on the policies and procedures to do it. And we limited it for the summertime just to the fall sports to see how that would go. And then we can slowly add the other sports. But so far for us, it's just been cheer and volleyball that have been doing conditioning and doing some workouts. Right now it's all outdoors, and by and large it's gone pretty good. And then football, I just spoke with Ricky yesterday, and they waited until the NCS decision, the CIF decision, because, you know, they didn't want to get started and put, you know, coaches and players at risk if there wasn't going to be a season or anything like that. But now that we know that there will be a season, they're actually going to start doing some light conditioning with just seniors the first week of August, and then they're going to slowly taper in those lower level teams and get people going. So I guess a positive is teams got a lot of time to condition beforehand. So.
Okay, so let's kind of jump ahead. I see George isn't at his post, so we'll jump ahead. So first off, let me ask, do you think that sports will be played if there's no vaccine and if the virus is still being contracted? Obviously not as high of a rate that it is now, but if the virus isn't being contracted as much, will sports still be allowed, do you think, obviously you're not the decision makers, the CIF and NCSR, but if an athlete tests positive for the virus, what will be the protocol if you've even thought about it at that point?
That's a really complicated question. It's a good, not the problem with offering an answer response is that we're at the mercy of not just really the CIF or North Coast, but really the school district and the protocols that are in place for how we're supposed to respond. And that goes for not just athletics, but also any program or activity where kids are around each other. But if I'm answering to your first question of do I think sports will happen, I think we got a puncher's chance, and we're going to stay optimistic about it here at Vintage. But medically, we've got a long ways to go, and I'm hoping that the smart people in the world get after it. And I don't know about a vaccine, but just we're going to have to make some medical advancements if we're going to pull this off. But for right now, on July or late July, I'm going to stay optimistic.
Yeah, we're going to prepare like we're going to have a season. As Cam said, we're not the final decision makers, and years away from our medical degrees. And but you know, I mean, if for example, right now in the summertime, right, if we had a kid turn up positive during conditioning, we already had a protocol in place that individual would have to, you know, go obviously quarantine themselves for the 14 days and couldn't come back until their doctor said they were negative and tested negative. And any individuals that were in their pod would also be sent home, be requested to be tested, and then, you know, able to come back after they were negative. So I guess my long-winded answer would be that would probably be the same protocols come December, but I think the focus with our districts are more on the academic end.
Right.
Yeah, likewise, you know, I think as these guys are saying, you know, more than what the NCS and CF decisions are, it's what the district is. And the district, you can't, you know, they're going to be conservative and they're going to not want to take any chances, you know, rightfully so. So I think athletics takes a backseat to academics, which being a teacher, you know, that's only fair, I suppose. But what I'm hoping is as time goes on, I think this first part of this virus, most people have been quick to like, okay, we got to cancel things. And, you know, here's this little pop-up. We got to, anyone who was exposed, we got to keep them out and stuff. I'm hoping as time goes on, that subsides a little bit. And we realize that maybe there's some treatments out there or whatever, where we don't need to cancel everything just because there's a little scare, and you can continue on safely. How that's going to look, I have no idea. You know, like you said, if one kid if a lineman on a football team gets it, I mean, he's in contact with the whole line. I mean, you know, and they're so close. So it's just one of those things that I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But I mean, all you can do is stay optimistic and hope as time goes on, you know, things get better and the mindset of people gets better.
Gotcha. So how have your coaches sort of been adjusting to this whole virus deal? Like, I know the protocols obviously been happening at Napa and at Vintage, Justin, all over the place there. What type of stuff did you guys have to do to get your coaches ready to go back and do summer activities?
Well, we began by studying the issue as best we could and try to understand that, and then communicating with the county health officials. We developed a series of protocols and parameters, limitations, and then we did a training session with our coaches and told them we just have to get this right. We've got the county to say we can do this, so we have to do it exactly like we described to them. There's no room for gray area or speculation or interpretation. We need to do this right. And I've been really proud of our coaches for doing that. They've really followed through and followed the policy to the letter.
Actually, two things that I think I would point to in response to that question would be, one, making sure that my coaches have a very, very solid understanding of what the disease is, what the virus is, excuse me. We took the NFHS class just for very basic information. We passed along some articles that we read, just so there's not just a headline knowledge of what we're dealing with, but some sort of depth of understanding of what we're up against here. And then two, prior to starting our conditioning, we went to I went with Coach Leach, our football coach, and we looked at our space that we were going to utilize, and we visualized what it was going to look like and how we were going to pull it off. And I did the same thing with all the fall sports that started: cross country, tennis, water polo, volleyball, all the teams that did conditioning. We went to the space that they were going to utilize and made sure we understood what it was going to look like and how we're going to utilize that space.
And very similar, our football team did the same thing, that George and Cam alluded to. Following, CDC guidelines and protocols and, temperature checks and symptom checks and social distancing and keeping kids in pods and reviewing the area in which they were going to condition. And I thought our football coach did a real good job of execution in temperature checks and keeping records and ensuring kids are safe and limiting the amount of kids and sessions on the field. We made sure that there was 30-minute, gaps between sessions, so kids had the time to leave the area immediately before other kids showed up. And it was a challenge. We're not gonna sit here and say it was easy. It was a challenge, but the coaches pulled it off, and I think that was great, as they were role models for the student athletes to show just how important it is to follow these guidelines and protocols and rules, despite what other people's opinions may be. These are the rules, and these are what we need to do to follow to ensure that we have the opportunity to be safe. And again, I thought our coaches executed that very well.
One of the benefits for us for being a couple weeks behind some of the other area districts is that we had an opportunity to kind of see how it was going with other schools. And thanks to George, Justin put together one of the first kind of outlines of protocols that I saw and, offered it out to our ADs. And then teaching down at Terra Linda, I reached out to our football coach to see what they were doing. And so in turn, we got Marin Catholic's protocol. So I was able to kind of combine like a bunch of different outlines that schools are doing. And so I think that helped a lot with us kind of seeing what some similarities were and, what the things to really kind of prioritize. And so when CASA and we put together our protocols, that helped out quite a bit. And to the credit of our coaches, they've been really over the top, keeping the safety of the athletes as a priority. Our cheer coach, there's these big chalk squares that are 6 feet apart in our quad to keep, so the athletes have no excuse to not know where they're going. Same thing with our volleyball coach. They got them all like these little baskets that they keep all their, their volleyballs, their bands, their water in. And so there's no excuse for them to go, before, all the athletes would put their water bottles in the same area and they'd all go get them and stuff. So our coaches have gone above and beyond to plan out all these things that we have taken for granted for all this time. So they've just done a great job, and it's worked out well for us so far.
So as a kind of a follow-up, with the MLB, NFL, and NBA all kind of getting going here in the upcoming weeks, how important is it going to be for those leagues to sort of draw out a good plan per se, if you will, for you in order for high school sports to get going and sort of take parts of their plan in order to get back going in a safe way?
Well, I think psychologically it's real important for our culture for these sports to be playing, and it's an uplift for morale and stuff. But they bring resources to the table, Kyle, that we just can't possibly muster. They're testing Major League Baseball players every other day. The NFL is going to test every day, I think. The NBA is in a bubble. We can't create a Napa, Sonoma, Petaluma bubble. There's just things we can't do. It's inspiring, and I think it's helpful. And there may be some things that we learn about spread amongst athletes from the professionals' experience. But you can even see Division I sports having a hard time standing up because of the resources. And we don't have the resources they have, so we can't emulate what they're doing. We may learn from it, but we can't copy it.
Yeah, I think it's all psychological, like George mentioned. And, those individuals who are not in athletics and decision-making positions, they're just going to be more reactionary towards the results. And so I'm just hoping that the results are positive. So it gives us a fair chance to pull this off.
I wish we could recreate that bubble idea. That seems to be the one that maybe has the best chance of making it all the way through a season. But I know personally, I loved watching the baseball games yesterday, and hopefully it's like the emotional and mental state of people will be in a better spot. If they can figure it out and make it happen, at least we still have a chance. If they can't make it happen at the highest level with all the resources that George was referring to that are in play, then I think back to that question that Michael asked a while back, we don't stand a chance.
So let's move on. Do you guys anticipate having fans at your games, maybe at a condensed level, or if no fans are allowed, will you make an effort, or will the school try and make an effort to perhaps live stream these games?
Well, the state protocol is pretty clear on what stage 3 means, what stage 4 means, and you can't have a gathering over 100 people while you're in stage 3. So that's going to preclude many fans being at any game. And yeah, I think live streaming is an option. But let's be honest, high school football is a really important driver of revenue for a lot of individual schools and for the section itself. And if we can't have fans in the stands, it's going to create some real hardships for folks in terms of budgets. I don't know what the odds are of being in stage 4 by the time football season starts playing in January. I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but what I've seen so far, I wouldn't put them as very high.
We're gonna pursue the live stream. I mean, there's ads that are in my email inbox almost daily for various companies that offer that. So we'll do our best if it's possible. But we also just financially, I mean, we're hoping that our parent group, which has been phenomenal during my tenure as AD, will support us, and more importantly, more specifically, support the opportunity for the kids, even if they can't necessarily be there in person. I'd say it's a slim chance right now that we're going to have spectators, but hopefully people remember that the kids ultimately their opportunity to play is what's most important. I know they got a lot of people asking to be part of the chain gang, stadium announcers or whatever.
I know they're professional athletes, but one thing that I've loved seeing is I watched the Premier League in European soccer and the baseball games yesterday, like Cam and the PGA Tour, whatever sports I can get, I've been watching. Those guys are competing as hard as they ever do, whether fans are there or not. I know fans are a part of the experience, but the real experience is competing with your team, being with your team, and going against other folks and measuring yourself. And those things are so really valuable. And they're a higher priority than fans. I mean, fans are part of the experience, but they're only maybe a secondary experience.
Right. We're looking at the live stream possibility, right? We've got a great partnership with Sonoma Valley TV 27. We did lose one of our play-by-play announcers who decided to go to ASU. but we'll figure out how to get that person replaced. So for home games, I think we're set. Away games, different story, and there's as Cam mentioned, a lot of emails and opportunities and resources available to get some live stream through NFHS.
Yeah, like Cam was saying, I'm getting a lot of emails about different, camera options and video options and whatnot. I don't foresee us making a big purchase like that, but we have a good Trojan Live program at Petaluma that has historically been able to broadcast some games and stuff like that. So we already started the conversation with our tech club and that kind of stuff to get things videoed so people can see. Again, I have no idea about spectators, and like George was saying, I think the idea, although fans add to the experience and I think make it so special, maybe without spectators, the kind of the true essence of athletics and sports really could kind of get highlighted. And instead of kids, worrying about their parents in the stands or friends or whatever, they just focus on their actual sports. So, there might be a positive come out of it if there's no spectators for a certain time.
Coaches might enjoy it.
Yeah, right. Jeez. No parents hollering at them.
We might get more officials to sign up
for a year.
Yeah.
So the next thing I want to ask is, like, George, I know you have multiple coaches who coach multiple sports. I'm not sure about you, Cam, and all you other guys, but how is that going to work with this new sports calendar? I mean, it's got to be something where you're going to have overlapping seasons when coaches that go both ways, like coaching baseball or football, track, and that, all types of different sports.
Yeah, it's a challenge like the other challenges. We have probably a higher percentage of multi-sport athletes too. Over like 74% of our student body plays a sport, and over 50% of those student athletes are multi-sport athletes. And the seasons were arranged in a way that works. Now, the CIF allows for someone to play two sports in the same season, but take basketball and baseball are a common double for multi-sport athletes. Well, they can't. How's that going to work? Either you're only showing up to contests and not practicing, or you're practicing and you're part-time in both sports. So that's a challenge. Coaches will have to choose. There's no way you can coach two sports simultaneously and really give it your all. I think anyway, that would be a real difficult challenge. Coaching needs to be present on a regular basis, modeling certain things that you want for your team. And I don't think you can do that with your foot in two different places at once.
Yeah, we have our tennis coaches both boys and girls, and traditionally those would be fall and spring. And so now, I think it could be easier in some aspects, but more difficult, if the schedule plays out to where it's like boys will be home and girls away, then he has to worry about finding an assistant to go to away games, like those kinds of things. But then practices might be easier, because all the kids are at once. Of course, if you have the court space. So I think, like with a lot of things with this situation, there's positives and there's negatives.
We're fortunate. We don't have coaches that are multiple sport. Not that that's a bad thing, but just an advantage right now. We have a coach for an individual coach for every different sport. So that will not be a challenge that we have to face. And furthermore, coaches that will have to share space, for the most part, are actually pretty good friends. So that's one challenge that we won't have to necessarily overcome. Thankful for.
Yeah, we've got one coach. He does girls golf and boys tennis. And he hasn't called me or texted me yet in a panic yet to figure out what to do. So I'm gonna put that on the back burner.
So I'll close out kind of my line of questioning, and then Kyle can kind of add whatever he wants to ask at the end. But the final question I want to ask is, when should we expect to see updated league schedules with the updated dates for all sports? And that can be anyone that wants to answer, and not everyone has to answer it.
I I think we have a late August Board of Managers meeting. That's with the principals and ADs, and I think that's when some of the, at least the fall schedules get officially approved. But I do think that our website has the fall schedules posted as drafts right now, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't looked here in the last day, but I don't think it's official until it's approved by the Board of Managers, which is a late August meeting.
Kyle, go ahead.
All right. So switching gears here, kind of want to ask about what was the decision before everything with this coronavirus stuff hit to bring back the postseason basketball tournament. I had noticed that I had heard that was going to come back for this upcoming year. Is it still going to come back? What was the decision behind that?
The coaches wanted it back, right, Mike?
It's coming back. Yeah, it's coming back. It was going to come back pre-COVID, and it's coming back in this new season as well. Coaches wanted it. ADs wanted it.
I think that first year it was a new thing for vintage, and I don't even know if we really knew what we probably should have known in terms of the value that it brings, and just kind of, I don't know, it makes a lot more sense. Our league, we need to celebrate, I think, some of the things we've talked about in this conversation. And the way you can do that is have tournaments at the end where it's a nice little cherry on top of seasons, whether it be basketball or baseball, softball, and get those people in the room or in the gym. One last chance. I mean, let's be honest, our basketball teams aren't necessarily competing at the section level. I know Mike's got a really good team right now, and we had a good team last year, but we need to celebrate league, and I think the more we can do that and hang our hat on just doing a really good thing for our league, there's nothing wrong with that.
Have you guys considered, let me just jump in really quick, have you guys considered making the tournament championship be the automatic qualifier for NCS? Because Marin County does that. The Marin County Athletic League, they do that. And I've been to a couple of those girls basketball championship doubleheaders at Redwood High School, and it's so much more exciting and energetic, and the winner of the tournament gets that automatic bid. Has there been any consideration of making the tournament champion the automatic NCS qualifier?
That was discussed, but again, I think why you're having a regular season, a team demonstrates their ability to win the league over a course of a long period of time, as opposed to, 2 or 3 games in 5 nights when, you may have injuries or sicknesses. And is that a true showing of your league champion, 1 week as opposed, 3 days as opposed to 6, 7, 8 weeks?
Yeah, agreed.
So on top of that, where is the tournament scheduled to take place? Is it going to be at the home venues? Where's the championship game going to be? I mean, has this stuff all kind of been decided yet, or is it something that you guys are going to need to now adjust with, again, this new schedule that we just had come out on Monday?
I don't think it's been decided yet. Last year, or 2 years ago, I should say, it was at American Canyon. But that's a hefty ask of the host school to take that on. There's a lot of moving parts with that. So I think that's probably an agenda item for a meeting coming up as we start to figure out spring sports.
Has there been other locations considered? Maybe not so much in Napa County, but kind of meeting in the middle somewhere where it's, let's say you have a sport, let's say you have a tournament championship of, Petaluma and Casa Grande. Are you going to make them travel to American Canyon to play, or could there be another venue lined up that's perhaps closer to them Whereas, 2 years ago, it worked out great because you had American Canyon and Napa playing in that final game, at least in the boys' game. And then in the girls' game, you had Vintage involved.
Right.
What would happen in a situation if it came to that? And even, including Sonoma in that aspect, and not including one of those, 4 Napa area schools.
Well, speaking for Sonoma, we'd go anywhere. Doesn't matter as long as we're in that game. I think we talked about maybe a site possibly being Napa Valley College. But again, it also determines on the site and their ability to want to host it and their availability to host it. And, they're going to ask the question, what's in it for them?
Yeah.
We're talking finance.
Yeah.
So
Financial piece is nothing to sleep on.
So again, it's an agenda item, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that and where and how we can execute it.
Gotcha. So let's see here. So like this is a question that I'm pretty sure none of you are gonna have an answer to right now, but is there any way you can see your teams getting into the weight room before their season starts? To sort of have a normal off-season program.
Whole team at once?
Well, like yeah, obviously that's not gonna happen, right? But some sort of weight room program so that they can get some lifts in and be ready for, say, football season or basketball or baseball,
We're lifting now, but we're just doing it outdoors.
Right. Yeah, and that's probably to answer your question directly, that's the way we're going to do it, is get out of the actual room and just set up the racks and stations outside of the weight room to get our athletes an opportunity.
Let's see, is there anything else here? I think that's all I've got for you guys.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it, and hopefully this sports season 2020-2021 can go over smoothly. So good luck to all of you, and thanks once again. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
You guys.
Yeah.